Today, we're going to talk about CPI. Before I continue, I'm just guessing that you guys probably heard about CPI. Do you want to maybe tell the audience what you think about CPI before I continue?
Yeah, I think CPI, to my knowledge, is a index representing consumer spending in a period of time, right? So if it's higher index, it may mean that people are buying things. If it's lower, it may mean people are not buying things. So I think the Fed probably uses this as an indicator to basically evaluate if they should raise or lower down the interest rate, right? And am I right?
Yeah, so it's an indicator for inflation. So so CPI is the Consumer Price Index. So it's a fixed basket of goods. They will calculate the price, and then they will compare based on like last month or the year before, like how much the price changes. So that is the way they measure the inflation via the CPI index. So last week we talked about the PCE price index. So the PCE is the personal consumption expenditure. So the way they calculate is a little bit different from the CPI. And PCE is actually the consumption part of the GDP report. So the main difference between the two, as far as I know, is that the CPI weights is pretty much fixed and it's not changed a lot. But for PCE, the weighting of the different goods and services changed a lot more often than the CPI. So right now, okay, if you look, okay, this is the BLS government release of the CPI. And this one is, you can see on the column, it shows the different month, right? So the one that we are interested in is the April CPI. So this is the latest one. So this is month over month changes. So 0.3% is all items. So basically it's everything. So basically this is the one that's reported in the media. This is the headline inflation. So this means that from the March to April, so 1 month change is an average will be like 0.3%. So this is a weighted average. So different components of the CPI has a different weightage. And the unadjusted 12-month year-over-year change. So this is basically the price index from April this year compared to the price index April last year, which is 2023, and it's at 3.4%. So this one is the headline inflation, CPI changes. And you can see that the component is basically the main component is the food, energy. So all item less food and energy, this is the core CPI, right? Which is like 3.6%, which is higher than the 3.4%. Anyway, I will show you later in the Fed website. You can see the chart will be easier to see. But now we just have a look at the CPI in general, the different components, and which one are the ones that are problematic. 0.3%. I think I covered this before, but I'm just going to repeat. Like, how do we know whether is it high or low, right? Like, for example, we have 0.1, 0.2. Of course, if it's negative, it means, in terms of high inflation environment, negative probably is a good news. But how do we know, okay, what kind of a percentage we want that is considered, just right, not too high and not too low? So, easy trick is that the percentage is 0.2%. So because 0.2, if you multiply by 12, remember this 1 month change, they multiply by 12, it's about 2.4%. Remember that the target inflation rate is about 2%. So anything between 0.1 and 0.2 is considered good. So anything that you have like, 0.3% or anything that's higher, especially like 0.4, even 0.9%, so these are considered high. So anything that is close to 0.2 is considered good. But of course, right now, everything is like all over the place. But in terms of the headline and the core inflation, right now is 0.3. But if you compare from last month, it's 0.4. And especially since the start of the year, from October last year, 0.1, 0.2, 0.2, right? So all these are very nice numbers, which is why the market was actually going high. Part of the reason is because these are very good numbers. But starting from January, the number had been kind of high, 0.3 and 0.4. And then starting April, last month, it came down a little bit, which is why the market actually rallied Thursday and Fridays because of the fact that inflation came in, slightly lower, even for the core inflation before. Simple rule of thumb is 0.2% is considered good because it will result in a more 2 point something 4%. Okay, so the problematic part was the food initially. So food and energy was very volatile, right? But we can see that food is coming down. So it's even negative, right? Which means that, so now the problematic components are actually getting better. But the ones that are problematic now is okay, one of them will be electricity. So this is the one that is actually really high, right? So if you look at the like year over year, the problematic ones are like this one, electricity, and then we have like shelter and transportation service. So these are the high ones that we want it to come down. And I can briefly tell you why it is so high. In terms of electricity, right? Even though it's very high here, if you look at natural gas and coal prices and even gasoline prices, right? All these are not that high. It's coming down. It came down. We will see later. But why this is still so high is because the fact that energy companies are actually making a high profit. So their costs, which is like natural gas and coal, those are actually coming down. But this is still pretty high. The phenomenon that we see is that companies like to use inflation as an excuse to raise prices. This one makes sense, right? So once they will say, oh, we are raising prices, and the reason is because they will blame it on inflation. But then when their cost goes down, like the commodity price goes down, they will not cut prices, right? They will keep their prices high. And in terms of the transportation service, this is also the same thing. The reason why this is so high is because of vehicle insurance. And they also say the same thing, right? That the reason why raise prices, the premium for the insurance is because of inflation. But we know that even for the components has been coming down, but this is particularly sticky. So what I've been hearing is that, all of these are not really directly related to the interest rate. So even if you raise the interest rate, it is not really going to help fight all this sticky component because these are more companies, trying to raise their revenue. And we will talk about shelter. Shelter is the housing part, and why this part is also very high because this is like a lagging indicator. But anyway, we will just move quickly to the next tab.
How come from the list it doesn't include the IT computer components, which our modern generation these days, we spend a lot on the mobile phones, the computer, laptops, etc.
All those are in a way in one of the components.
Because it seems a lot like even apparel, clothing is covered, but not that kind of computer
It's one of the component. I'm not exactly sure like which one, but yeah, that's a good question. But okay, we can actually see it here. Okay, so this is a more comprehensive breakdown of the CPI.
Oh, okay. One more.
So
Oh,
if you search for
alcohol.
computer, yeah, you can see right here, right? Personal computers and
Yeah. Okay.
so yeah, and this is under education and communication. But then again, this is the part that this is in a different category. Like for example, this is FRED database, right? And this one is the one that is released by the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Yeah, I think that's the name of BLS. I think maybe not everything is listed here. These are only the ones that probably are the ones that are more problematic. But you can see more information here from the FRED database, right? And we have computers here. And probably this is not actually very problematic. It doesn't actually grow a lot. Okay, so this is the CPI index. So they have a base index, probably not exactly sure, 1982 to 1984. This is the basis 100. Do you know what this means exactly? Like, yeah, I'll just answer the question. We'll just arbitrarily select a year as a base. So that will be 100. And anything that is, like for example, this is 110, right? 1986. So it just means that prices compared to 1982 to 1984, which is a base of 100, it raised 10%, right? So this is basically a quick way of you to say, okay, so like 311%, right? Compared to back in 1982. But anyway, by looking at this, we cannot really tell much. All we know that prices have been increasing all this time, which is something that is desirable because remember I told you that deflation is something that we don't want to have, right? So a 2% inflation is considered a healthy inflation. So prices going up is considered desirable, but this graph is not very helpful. So what we see is the percentage change from a year ago. So we do a year ago, this is the one that we saw just now, right? Like 3.4%, right? Remember? This is round up to 3.4%, which is what you see here at 3.4%. And if you do a percentage change, you will see the 0.3%, like down here, right? So this is the 0.3%. So we want it to be, remember, 0.2 and below 0.2 and below will be considered good. So if you go back to a percentage change from a year ago, you can see that the CPI, it went very high, right? Back in 2022, it went up very high, up to like what, 8%-ish. And then now it has been coming down. So this is like considered a good thing. But it has shown like particularly sticky around this level, 3%-ish, because the what the Fed wants to see is they want it to go down to 2%. Like it's like trending down. But right now it's been particularly sticky. And if you look at the part that is sticky right now, at least right now, the ones that are holding back the inflation is the transportation service and the shelter part and the electricity. But the main part is the shelter part because shelter, the component is very high. If you look at shelter, right, it has a 36% weightage in the CPI index. So this column is the relative importance. So this is the weight, right? Everything adds up to 100%. So shelter is very high. So for example, like transportation service, just now, even though it was like 11%, but the weight is considerably lower, 6.4. But even 6.5% is considered high. And something interesting is that electricity is 2.4%, right? The one that we see just now. So the transportation service is even higher than energy service. it's quite remarkable, right? If you look at this, like, why is transportation service such a high weightage? The part of the reason is because for energy services, even though this is a low percentage, but energy creep in other or in all forms of area in the CPI. So even if you don't see it directly, indirectly it affects the other component as well. So the shelter is particularly sticky. This is the part I will talk about more later. But before I continue, do you guys have anything, any question?
The question that I keep on wondering is, like, what are they going to do with this report here, right? But because we know is some of the items are going up by a lot, some of them are going down. For example, you say transportation is going up by a lot, right? So is the Fed going to do something to limit the corporation's profit, or are they going to just
profiteering, right?
Yeah.
The Fed cannot do anything regarding about that. I mean, if somebody wants to do it, it could be the government. So, for example, Biden is going for re-election, right? So he can probably, it's some kind of pressure for these companies to not raise price unnecessarily. But then again, even if the government doesn't do anything, the company cannot keep on doing this, right? They cannot keep on raising price. One day that is going to stop. It's just an event. It's just a matter of time. I mean, just strictly based on market forces, right? they cannot just keep on doing it without any reason for it. Like, I mean, if everybody, like their cost of goods all went up because of inflation, everybody raised price, that makes sense, right? But if your cost is not high, and if you keep on raising price, one form or another, the market will prevent you from doing it. It could be because of competition, or a government might come in. But right now, the Fed cannot do anything. All
I
the
see.
Fed can do, all the Fed can do is it will just raise interest rate. But interest rate would be it's a very blunt tool. And in this case, it doesn't really help because interest rate is a way to reduce the demand, but it will not actually prevent companies from making profits. I like this kind of profiteering. Andre, you want to say something?
Yeah, would this kind of index, because it looks very comprehensive, would this index sort of give a direct translation to how this could be used to foresee opportunities of the different categories? Like, for example, it looks like the shelter is the highest or one of the highest. So does it mean because consumers are spending more on that is a good
Okay, that is a
going to?
okay. For that question, we will talk about it more later. The shelter I'll talk more in depth later. But what I want to say is that the whole reason why we're looking at all the CPI report, it's not because we are trying to see a way to make a profit. This one is more to understand what the Fed is thinking, right? Because the Fed, they are looking at the CPI. Although they are not targeting CPI in particular, because they are targeting the PCE inflation, right? But they move together. The CPI and the PCE move together. So the Fed will also be interested in the CPI as well. So right now we are just more thinking about, what exactly are the reasons why the Fed is not cutting rates, what the market is actually worried about, like potential for inflation to come back again, So we want to understand more from a knowledge perspective, like what is keeping inflation up. So that is a perspective that we are looking at the CPI report. It's not so much, like whether the report will make you money or not. It's not so much that. But yeah, it's more for added knowledge and interest. Just a good thing to know, right? In general, like for me, like last time I couldn't be bothered about information like this. It took me a while, I kept watching Bloomberg or other CNBC, and then, because the market is always very particular, you're waiting for the economic reports to come out and the market will move, right? So yeah, so the reason why is that I started to get more in tune, and all this knowledge I learned, I'm trying to like just share it with the viewers and you guys as well. But anyway, let's just jump to the rest. So the core inflation. So okay, if you look at this, what can you tell between this graph and this graph? So this is the headline inflation and this is the core inflation. What is the first thing that jump straight to you? And what's the difference between these two charts? Let me just zoom in. Like, what is the first thing that will jump up straight to you? Do you see that one seems to be smoother than the other one? This one seems to be a bit jagged, right? And this one seems to be smoother, right? If we look at the year over year change, see what is the difference. Okay, so this is the headline inflation and this is the core inflation, right? So the difference between headline and core inflation is inflation will not include food and energy. The reason why it does that is because food and energy is very volatile. And because it's so volatile that, 1 month can go up and then second month it can go down a lot, right? And the Fed, they want to take away this because it's too volatile, right? They want to see the underlying trend more clearly. So they strip away food and energy. And okay, just now I think I didn't say it clearly. So the Fed targets the core PCE inflation. So it's a core inflation that the Fed is interested in, and it's not like headline inflation, right? So one thing that's jump straight to you is that the core inflation is smoother, less noisy, but at the same time, the core inflation is also higher. If you look at this one right now, the core inflation right now is 3.6, and this is 3.4. Which means that, okay, the reason why core inflation is higher than headline inflation is because energy prices fell a lot. It went up a lot last year because of the war in Ukraine, but then now the prices all came down, right? Which is why the headline inflation came down faster than the core inflation. But eventually, the core inflation will also come down. Right now, the reason why core inflation is not coming down is because of, okay, we know that electricity is energy, right? So this is not the reason. The reason is because of transportation and shelter. But then again, remember, shelter has a higher weightage. This part is actually the shelter part. The shelter is the sticky part. We will talk about that later. We will see why